relationship and understanding of money so that they can live well in retirement, even to grow their generational wealth. And I just want to name a couple of tools. We have a lot on our arp.org/money website, but it's not just looking at the numbers, but we take pride in here's where people can go. So on arp.org/money, you can find free articles on a range of topics on how to invest, strategies on investing, budgeting, managing debt. We have an amazing free planning tool called Money Map in English and Espanol. And this tool was made to help people manage the complicated world of finance. We have work and save programs, which help people to save for retirement at work. Nearly half of all American workers have no access to a retirement saving plans through employers. And we can't count on Social Security to cover all of our expenses. We also have, a number of workshops that we do. We go to where our Latinos are. We do things on Facebook. We have a series called A Todo Volumen, where we've had financial experts. And then we do a lot of partnerships with powerful Latinas, right? Because we need to gravitate. We need people that look like us. One of my favorites is Jen Hemphill of Her Dinero Matters. And we've chatted with her on her podcast about navigating unplanned expenses, sponsoring free virtual series. She has one called Financially Strong Latina. So it's looking at the data, finding the tools, and serving it up to the community.
I'd like to add something. I think it's amazing what AARP does. And AARP is fortunate to have Yvette as an advocate. And before, I think one of the most important things to help close the wealth gap is fostering trust. Fostering trust with the individuals that make up our community. And that means that institutions, financial institutions, and other types of organizations like AARP need to do more comprehensively, consistently to build trust with our community. Because you can have all these amazing resources that Yvette talked about. But if there are individuals, and if as a collective, a community, we don't trust AARP or we don't trust organizations, financial institutions, individuals and families will not avail themselves of all of this information and resources. So it's imperative that organizations look to identify advocates and allies like Yvette in their institutions, in their organizations, to go out and foster trust with the individuals and the families in our community, because you don't get there without that.
Agreed. And one thing that we do well, Raquel, to that point is, with all of our state offices, we're out there in La Comunidad, in community, all of our 50 states, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And something that Cleo mentioned, that partnership with organizations like We're All Human, Unidos US, Hispanic Heritage Federation, Hispanic Federation, Hispanic Heritage Foundation. Our mission, our information goes out through a lot of those organizations, because you are right, Raquel, those are the trusted organizations that Latinos gravitate toward. And sometimes we need those platforms of trust, absolutely, to be able to help people out there.
Yes, that's all wonderful points, and I think a part of what you're getting at, Raquel, is not only having advocates, but that's why I think the hiring and diversity, it's so great that each of you are at your respective organizations, but going into the bank and having someone who looks like you, is from your community, I think that's part of the building of the trust too. One area though, and I see some people mentioning it in the chat there, where there still seems to be kind of a shortfall in that diversity is in the science, the technology, engineering, and math. They're still called STEM. And Raquel, I want to go to you because you used to be the CEO of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And I'm just kind of curious why it's so important to, get Latinos interested in that, and kind of maybe to piggyback on that, just kind of some of what you learned in that role that you now have taken with you to CRA.
Sure. Well, STEM is what makes the world go round, right? It's where ideas and solutions are born, oftentimes out of science and technology and engineering and math. And no doubt we have a long way to go when it comes to increasing the diversity of the various STEM fields and professions. When I was the CEO of SHIP, and I had the opportunity to talk with SHIP members, 80% of them university students, I would tell them, I would encourage them, and I would say, as Hispanics, as Latinos, we were some of the first STEM professionals. Think about the Incas and the Mayans and the Aztecs. We were scientists and mathematicians and engineers. We were warriors and we were creators. And so we, at the beginning of civilization, we were doing these amazing things, and we are currently doing amazing things. We just need more of us doing amazing things through STEM. And so lots of opportunity there. And I think the technology companies are coming around. They still have work to do. They're spending millions of dollars, going and recruiting diverse talent. The opportunity for them, and I used to have these conversations with executives at tech companies and other companies, is really middle management. You can have, tone at the top and buzz at the bottom with the employee resource groups, but the middle managers, the ones making the decisions on where are we going to go recruit and who are we going to interview and who are we going to make a job offer to, the day-to-day where hidden biases show up in our systems, it's with middle management. And so I would oftentimes tell, if there were executives at these companies and other organizations, if there's one thing you need to do is mind the middle. We really need to address the biases and really drive home the value proposition, the business imperative, the future imperative of diversity in STEM for those middle managers. These days, because many of my colleagues are economists and data scientists and forensic accountants, I realized that there is even less diversity in the field of economics. And it's not something that I really thought about. And I have been thinking about it for the last almost 2 years. And when I talk to other Hispanic leaders about the fact that we do not have brown and Black economists, and that is problematic, they oftentimes, a light bulb goes off and they're like, I hadn't really thought about it. Because as a community, we're talking about our powerful impact, positive impact on the economy. But we're not talking about the fact that there is little to no diversity in the field of economics. If you want to be a catalyst of change, an agent of change, I think we need to do more as a community to encourage our young people to pursue studies and careers in economics. It is a social science about choice, individual personal choice and macro, macro government global choice that's rooted in data. And if we want to actually influence change, it's the research that's being done, the economic models that are being generated that then inform policy and legislation. So we need more brown and Black economists.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think working in business journalism, you do see that throughout a number of industries, but also in finance. It's not just our tech companies that have such a shortfall of diversity in their companies. It's nice to see, especially after the death of George Floyd, and in recent years, some focus on that. I hope it does continue. Cleo, I want to. Sorry, go ahead, Cleo.
Talking about what Raquel said, obviously at IBM, we're in the technology industry. And I agree with you 100%, Raquel, and so does, so do other executives at IBM. We do not have enough diversity, enough Latinos in, technology. And it is extremely painful because they're not even going into that area of study. So, one of the things that we're trying to do, for instance, at IBM is, we've already done is we've removed the requirement for college education, just to try to drive people to IBM and drive Hispanics in particular to IBM and, teach them and grow them and have them, create a career in technology at IBM. But I think every corporation has to think about what can we do to pull more Hispanics and more diversity into technology.
Yeah, I really applaud IBM for that move, because that was something that I would advocate too, as the CEO of SHIP, is you don't necessarily need a degree from a four-year institution to be good and to add value. And to change the socioeconomic status and trajectory of your family. And so one of the things that I was looking at was what I call the new collar, right? There's blue collar, there's white collar, and then there's the new collar. And these are professions, jobs that require some background, but not necessarily the four-year degree. This is where you get certifications and badges and things like that. And those can be game-changing economically for families. So I applaud IBM for what, IBM has widened their aperture, and I applaud IBM for doing that.
Another thing too that I see, Raquel and Cleo, is a lot of this starts at the high school level, right? Letting them know that they can, showing them what's out there and the opportunities, because a lot of times people of color don't see it. They don't see themselves represented. So they're like, I can't do that. So I applaud a lot of the nonprofit organizations that are doing that are doing the fellowships, that are doing the internships in the high schools, so that people can see that, yes, that our youth can see that there is an opportunity, that they can do it, and that there is support. Because a lot of times we're like, oh, I can't go to an Ivy League school, but Raquel just said it. You don't have to go to an Ivy League school. So I think starting with our youth, with what Unidos US does, I know Tony Tijerino does a lot with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. We need to start CHCI early with our youth now, so that they know where to go and that we can start paving the path for them.
Yeah, and it goes to confidence, Yvette, right? And certainly starting even before high school, it's early days, as soon as a child can have concepts of numbers and language, I think that's the opportunity to start influencing and really bringing awareness and access. I recall early days as the CEO of SHIP, working with this organization that was doing this study, and they had gone out to high school students, and they were gauging the students' interest in STEM. And the preliminary questions are, are you interested in STEM? Like, what about STEM are you interested in? And when it came to Hispanics, the Hispanic high school students were like, yes, super excited. Yeah, absolutely. And then as you got further into the survey and asking about, well, do you see yourself pursuing STEM? Do you see yourself as an engineer? Are you confident about pursuing STEM? Our numbers collectively, Hispanic high schoolers, our numbers went from being the highest interested to, can you see yourself to the very lowest of all of the different racial and ethnic groups. How does that happen? Why does that happen? What is going on in our community that our young people cannot see themselves in a STEM role, in a STEM profession? We need to do more and better about fostering confidence in our young people. And that's what Hispanic Heritage Month is about. It could be about that. But as a collective community, we need to do more and we need to do better by our young people.
Absolutely.
You're right. And it is more about representation too. We don't see, in STEM, I actually do have an engineering degree, and I can tell you in college, I was the only Hispanic. Well, I was also the only woman as well, but absolutely the only Hispanic. And I do some work with my alumni, and it's still very sadly minimal amount of Hispanics who are going into study engineering. They don't seem to think of themselves as engineers. They don't think, in some cases, they don't think I am technical enough to do that. At one point, I didn't think I was, but I liked math, I liked science, and I thought, why not? Right. So I really do think we need to make sure that more people are going through STEM, more people are studying engineering, technical types of programs, so that we see that we can do it. It's all about representation.
I think there was a lot of good conversation there on that topic. Cleo, I want to kind of, Cleo, sorry,
hold
go ahead,
on a
Raquel.
second. Yes, it's about representation, but it's also about identification.
Yeah.
Right?
You're
Because
right.
oftentimes there's Hispanics who don't identify as Hispanics. They don't show up that way.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily go around supporting other Hispanics or encouraging other Hispanics. So there's that aspect that needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cleo, I want to go with you. Obviously, you're a leader at IBM, and I know you studied that as part of your MBA. I'm wondering if you have any kind of leadership advice for companies or brands when it comes to the supporting the Latino workers, kind of what we're talking about. I don't know if you can even comment on that middle management that Raquel was talking about.
She's spot on. We need to be, this is my word I've been using all year in talking about our programs, intentional. We need to be very intentional about mentoring Latinos. We also need to sponsor them. We need to encourage them to move into leadership roles. I do worry that we are not focusing enough on the next generation of Hispanic leaders. IBM actually did conduct a research study with the Institute for Business Value, which you can download. It's called Untapped Potential, the Hispanic Talent Advantage. We found that younger Hispanic leaders, so the junior, the middle, are not getting the same advancement opportunities as more senior colleagues. And we all know that even the senior colleagues weren't being given that many advancement opportunities. So to get a study that shows that even our younger Hispanic leaders are seeing worse results was very disappointing. 41% of Hispanic executives surveyed said they have benefited from formal mentoring and on-the-job training, but only 26% of junior managers say they have access to any mentorship programs. 70% of junior leaders feel that they have to work harder to succeed because of their identity. That doesn't change as they progress up the ranks, with 63% of Hispanics saying they continue to have to work harder, or at least feel like they have to work harder because of their identity, no matter how far they've climbed up the leadership ladder. So as leaders, as corporations, we must recognize the problem and again, be very intentional on creating programs that will position Hispanics to become leaders and to progress.
I think that's fantastic that IBM looked at that data, went after that data and arrived at insights. I think in addition to mentorship and what I've been talking about lately, what could be game changers for organizations and I'm going to use your term, untapped potential is really about career sponsors and executive coaches. Because it's one thing to have a mentor, and there's formal programs and there's informal relationships. Mentors provide advice. Career sponsors advocate for you. And we need more career sponsors. And not necessarily, and you know, I have career sponsors that are not Hispanic. And so we need allies.
Yes.
I have my career sponsors have been white men. And so we need more allies to serve as career sponsors for Hispanic rock stars, but more importantly, for the untapped potential, those emerging Hispanic leaders. And in addition to career sponsors, because those aren't assigned, a career sponsor identifies you and becomes your sponsor. You don't go out and say, hey, will you be my career sponsor? The career sponsor comes to you. And that's where competence and confidence and capability, that's how you have to show up so you can be identified. But then there's executive coaches. And executive coaches, the good ones, are expensive. And they're not afforded to everyone. They're certainly not afforded to those that are identified as untapped potential. They're oftentimes afforded to those rising rock stars, or in a negative way, they're assigned to people who have a problem. I'm not a proponent of that type of executive coach, like, hey, let's give you an executive coach because you've got, there's a problem that you have, there's a weakness that we have to address. Executive coaches can be game changers. I have had executive coaches my entire career. If I see something in myself, or if my mentor or my career sponsors identify something, an opportunity for growth for me, I'm gonna go get an executive coach to help me navigate that particular issue. And so career sponsors and executive coaches in addition to mentors.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too that we need to realize, and I've tried to explain this within IBM, our culture, right? Our culture is heads down, I'm going to work hard. And when I work hard, people will recognize it and they'll see my potential and they'll say, hey, wouldn't you love to be a leader? That's not necessarily reality. So what I ask my leaders is, who do you see potential in? They might have that heads down approach. It is your responsibility to ask them, do you see yourself in a leadership role? I do. Here's the reasons why. But that also means we also have to do the same. We need to realize that in corporate America, that's not how it works. You have to, what I say, be humble bragging about yourself. There is a way to brag about yourself and show people all the great things you're doing and talk to them, but do it humbly. So I really would push everybody to, don't be afraid to shout out all the great things you're doing. I know our culture says, especially us as women, Latina women, growing up, I was, okay, you're quiet. I need you to be quiet, right? My husband often asks, what happened? Because I'm not. But you have to have a voice, use your voice. And that's how you can help your success.
You do. And you know what? One thing that's really tough, and I've been blessed in my career, are those career sponsors. Not very easy. And sometimes we need a little push. I really believe in the business resource groups. That's how people come together and they have a voice and they come together and they bring things to the organization. So people that are usually not in the spotlight can get in the spotlight. I also believe that when we have calibrations, we have to highlight those rock stars, those people that are up and coming that need support to kind of like start, planting seeds in the organization, because sometimes we need to help our own, right? If you're not invited to the table, bring your own chair, but sometimes you need that little push. And I think there's things that we can do also as leaders. I do it all the time, to help our Latinas and our Latinos within the organization to get more of that visibility, because like you said, Cleo, a lot of times we may be humble and we may be quiet, we may be doing great things and we don't know how to brag, in an eloquent way, right? But it's important. It's important to have that voice and to also help others bring you, because a lot of times some of these rock stars are stuck in their cube or stuck in their office and they're not seen.
right? I call what you described, Cleo, as ambitious humility, right? Toot your own horn without blowing it. There is a book, go read it.
Yeah.
It's about bragging
Brag better,
without
right?
being braggadocious,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's without, taking credit without being obnoxious, right? Doing it with grace. But no doubt, I think we need to do more to promote one another and advocate for one another.
And another
Yeah.
book is Unapologetically Ambitious. Read that book.
Sound like some good resources. And yes, I think kind of in summation, Raquel, it is we do need to learn how to advocate for ourselves. So through your mentors or just watching how people engage, the networking, and asking when you get a new job, learning how to ask for the higher salary, because no one oftentimes, unfortunately, is just going to give you these things. And it is tricky to learn. It's definitely things I've learned throughout my career. We are running out of time. I feel like we could keep talking, for another 45 minutes, but I want to close with a large question. But getting back to the idea of the narrative about Latinos, whether it's a monolith, whether they think of us all as immigrants or whatever it is, how do we change that that community, that label for our community, and become better represented in the United States and the larger world? If we could kind of quickly have some ideas around that, I do want to touch on that question before we wrap up. Yvette?
I feel we have to break the stereotypes, the bad ones, the untrue ones. And the best way to do it, we've all said it here, all of us on this stage today, is through facts and data, right? The growing demo, we are growing. We're the largest minority in the country. It had a GDP of 2.7 trillion in 2019, according to Hispanic Star. And by 2025, Hispanics will likely contribute more to the US GDP growth than non-Hispanics. Entrepreneurship, right? Latinos continue to start businesses at a faster rate than other groups. There's been a 44% growth in the number of businesses in the last 10 years compared to just 4% of non-Latinos. And in fact, 1 of every 5 entrepreneurs in the US is Latino. Latinos create businesses 6 times faster than any other group in the US. These are the facts that we have to use to help break those stereotypes, to support this community. 80% of all Afro-Latinos participate in the US workforce. 66% of new homes are being bought by Latinos. Another thing is nuance, right? Nuance is a word that people throw around when they talk about cultures. But you know what? It's the most important word that we can use when talking about multiculturalism today. The US has just begun to have that conversation with Latinos where we're able to express ourselves without having to dilute what we say or how we say it. So we can become part of American culture while becoming ourselves. So Latinos from region to region, country to country, city to city can identify differently. And the organizations who are sensitive and respectful to this will really win Latino hearts. And this brings me to the last point. It's very easy to use our differences to divide us. Our label evolves from this monolithic culture to the sum of many parts. We need to ensure that our narrative is one of how I started this discussion of unity. We have a lot more similarities than differences, and we need to really lean into it. We could be from Mexico, the Dominican Republic, but when there's a hurricane or there's an injustice committed, we're all the same. We come together, we're human. And so while we can celebrate our nuances, we need to come together and exist as a united front, unidos. And that is our Latino story.
That's a wonderful answer. Go ahead, Cleo.
I know we're running out of time, so
yeah,
I
so quickly.
to just mention, based on what Yvette said, a few pieces of data, because I agree with you. This is the best way for us to move forward, is for everyone to understand the data. So when we understand the data, and even non the data, I don't think people realize, especially because of stereotypes, most Hispanics in the United States today are not immigrants. They are US born. right? That is something that most people don't realize, even other Hispanics. Most are US born. In 2017, it was 2 out of 3. In 2022, it's probably more that are US born. When looking at the US labor force, it's estimated to increase by 12.3 million in the next decade. How many do you think will be Hispanics? 10.7. Just think about that. Think of the power that we have to make a huge impact and contribution to our society. Hispanics have accounted for about 50% of the total population growth in the last 30 years. And you mentioned home growth. We also have auto industry growth at 68%. And even though I'm a diehard soccer fan, by 2050, 63 million Latinos will be NFL fans. So the consumer power of Hispanic Americans has grown so much that marketing to Hispanic consumers itself has become a growth industry. And I know we're out of time. I could keep going and going, but thank you so much, Adrian, and the Financial Times, for We Are Human, for inviting me. And I will defer to Raquel.
Yeah, Raquel, I want to make sure we are out of time, but I want to get your voice on this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll approach it from a very practical lens. Labels. Redefine the label. Flip the script. Take back the narrative. Own the narrative. How do you do that? Through advocating. But before you can advocate, you need to be an effective communicator. And before you can be an effective communicator, you need to come across as credible and competent and confident. And so how do you get there? Being excellent. Being excellent at what's in front of you. Being passionate about what's in front of you. So strive for excellence. Become an effective communicator. Advocate through change, influence change, and be an advocate. And then go out and tell our story and be a role model and a mentor and a career sponsor for others.
I think that's a fantastic way to end it. And sincerely, I'm just honored to be able to moderate this panel with such talented, very professional, amazing Latina women. You guys are all inspirations to me. So thank you, Cleo, Yvette, and Raquel, for your time and your insights today. I think they've been very impactful to me, and hopefully they are to the audience. I also want to thank We Are All Human in conjunction with the Financial Times for organizing this call and doing similar programming. And lastly, I want to thank all those who took time out of their day to join us today. Thank you. And with that, that ends our call. Thank you.